Hey, top of the morning, everybody. It is a tasty Tuesday edition of The Sweat presented by DraftKings. Jesse Cofield to my left, Emerson Lazia to her right. However, we are not alone in this show.
That's right. We have analysts galore to give us an NBA play-in preview, how OBJ signing with Baltimore is going to impact Lamar's decision. Will it? We don't know. We'll talk about it. What kind of a Masters hangover can we expect from the stars and studs in the RBC Heritage Field? Something to talk about.
First things first, Cofield, a Tuesday tradition unlike any other. The Takeoff with DraftKings podcast host, Mr. Jared Carrabis. Good morning, friend. How are you today?
I'm doing outstanding. How are you guys?
Wow, just amazing.
Yeah, we are lovely. So are the Rays because they keep winning, dude. Their latest victim, the Red Sox last night. Tampa Bay now 10-0. Jared, are they this good at baseball, or is this more of a result of this soft opening schedule? Tigers, National A's, and now the Sox.
It's a little bit of both. Like, yes, they've had a soft schedule to open the season, but their pitching staff is about as legit as it gets. Their starting staff is good. Their bullpen is good. They don't give up runs. They've actually hit more home runs than they've allowed runs this season. I don't expect them to have a 950 OPS to lead the majors for the entire year, but they can swing it a little bit too. But if this team is going to win a World Series this year, it's going to be on the back of their pitching.
Okay.
All right, well, last night also the first game without Boston's hottest hitter, Adam Duvall, who landed on the IL with a broken wrist. The good news, he doesn't need surgery. The bad news, he's out 6 to 8 weeks, and the injury happened on that wrist that he already had surgery on last year. So, what's our prediction here, and what's the fallout from this?
So first things first, Adam Duvall, as of this taping, has not played in 2 games thus far this season. And in those 2 games combined, the Red Sox have scored 1 run. So that's not good, first and foremost. Second, to my knowledge, I'm not a doctor. I know that Emerson knows this. I don't know if Jesse knows this. I'm not a doctor. So
what?
I will say this. I know. I've asked around, and because I was also curious about if there's a correlation or if there's going to be a connection between, because it is the same wrist, but this injury and then the injury that he needed surgery on, season-ending surgery on, there's no correlation. So this injury and the prior injury shouldn't be connected, which is great. No surgery, but I was told that 8 weeks, the latter end of the spectrum, is optimistic. So it could be closer to something like 10. So the Red Sox are going to have to do a little mixing and matching here as it pertains to center field. They've got Jarren Duran. They've got Raimel Tapia. They've even mentioned throwing Bobby Dahlbeck out there.
Yeah.
And maybe not in center field, but at least getting some reps in the outfield. So they're going to have to get creative. But at the end of the day, they've got, I believe, 9 lefties in the next 10 days, and most of their outfield depth options are left-handed, so that's not good. You need more right-handed bats, so that's why we saw Bobby Dahlbeck last night.
Yeah, and not Jarren Duran to replace Adam Duvall there. Sounds like you and the boys on the pod are pretty excited about the hashtag Bob Stop, the potential.
Yeah, we love Bob Stop on the Name Redacted podcast. I've said this multiple times, but I'm going to say it again. I don't think that there is a professional athlete that I've ever rooted harder for than Bobby Dahlbeck. I just love him. He's a great guy. I find him to be the most easy to root for player of probably my entire life. So I'm rooting for Bob. I wanted to get some reps at shortstop. He was playing shortstop a little bit down in Worcester. He can play a little first base. I know that everyone's like, oh, well, you have Tristan Casas and then you got Justin Turner. Those guys aren't hitting either. So, I mean, what do they got to lose at this point?
That's a good question. Do you remember last week we went to the Red Sox game together? It was during the Pirates.
How can he forget? It was the worst game he's ever been to. He had to sit with you and watch you eat hot dogs for
At least I don't
hours.
eat my glizzies dry and raw dog them like this dude without mustard and ketchup. Just sucked 2 down in front of me. We shared a couple Coke Zeros. We had a great time together. But I remember O'Neal Cruz steps into the box. You go, hey, Emerson, you know who this guy is? I said, yeah, it's O'Neal Cruz. And you go, no, that's the king, the exit velocity king. So it sucks that he's going to be out 4 months now for the Pirates because of a fractured ankle here. How crushing is this to Pittsburgh's hopes?
Yeah, I mean, it was Pittsburgh's year up until that happened, and we were kind of just living in it. But this obviously is a big setback for the Pittsburgh Pirates. O'Neal Cruz being the exit velocity king. I don't know if you saw the play, but dude didn't slide. I mean, it's tough to blame someone that's injured and fractured their ankle. He's going to be out until August now, but I don't want to say it's entirely his fault, but it's kind of his fault. I mean, he didn't decide to slide until he was essentially in the right-handed hitter's batter's box. So it was quite the avoidable situation. It's unfortunate. I'm upset because not only am I a big O'Neal Cruz fan, but now Dallas Braden, my co-host on Baseball is Dead, is upset because so Dallas does this thing where he tricks me into thinking that I made a bet with him that I didn't actually make just to get me to buy him stuff. And he did that with an O'Neal Cruz jersey. So I don't even remember what bet he made up, but we definitely didn't make a bet. And he claimed that I lost it and that he just kept badgering me for months until I bought him an O'Neal Cruz jersey. So I finally bought it for him. So I'm just as sad as Dallas is.
Damn, man.
All right, what do you think about this? Manny Machado saying Acuna is the closest thing we have to Ken Griffey Jr. Do you agree with that?
I heard him say that, and I mean, I don't know. When I think of Ronald Acuna Jr., I don't think of Ken Griffey Jr. I don't. I respect Manny Machado's opinion, probably more so than most people in the city of Boston after what happened with Dustin Pedroia in 2017. But I think Ronald Acuna is the first Ronald Acuna. Like he's his own guy. The righty lefty comparison, like it's hard to make that. Obviously Griffey had pop, but he had speed, great defense. I don't know that you could even make the comparison defensively. So yeah, I don't know what he's seeing. Maybe it's just because of like the stolen base thing, and he's got pop and he's an outfielder. But outside of that, no. I think Griffey is still up here, and Ronald Acuna Jr. is trying to ascend to that Ken Griffey Jr. level.
Is there anybody you would compare to Ken Griffey Jr. right now playing baseball? I mean, nothing compares
probably,
to that smooth swing.
I know that this is going to sound like I'm contradicting myself, and I kind of am, but like Mike Trout, like if you're going to have a guy that I know that his defense has declined a little bit, but a guy that has at times an elite defensive ability in center field that can also hit for power, that is just a complete player, then yeah, like it would be Mike Trout.
God, man, over the weekend, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani doing their thing, and then the Angels losing most of those games as well. It is pain unlike any other. Clark's Ketchup MVP. We have our first of the season major hardware for Rafael Devers after the Red Sox sweep of the Tigers in Detroit. Jared, for anyone who doesn't know what the hell this is, please get them up to speed about it and how this came about.
Yeah, so on the Name Redacted podcast, which has existed in other forms prior to being the Name Redacted podcast, we have a lot of fake sponsors. We had Ronald's Napkins, we've got Clark's Ketchup, we've got a bunch of sponsors that aren't actual real companies, and Clark's Ketchup is one of them. They sponsor the series MVP. Every time the Red Sox win a series, you can't have a series MVP unless the Red Sox win the series. A split also doesn't count. So we have the Clark's Ketchup Series MVP. Every person on the podcast votes for who the MVP is. And then Clark's Ketchup hands out a bottle of ketchup to every series MVP. And also, if you're kind of like, if it's like an honorary guy where it's like, we want to acknowledge that this guy had a good series, but he's not the MVP, that guy gets a ketchup packet.
Oh, just a packet. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's also a theme song for this. And you created this yourself. Emerson and I have not heard it yet. So let's roll the tape. Let's play the song, and this is the moment right here. So let's go. Play it.
This is when we play it.
This is when
We're playing it.
you play it.
Oh, we can't hear it.
I mean, I could play it.
You just gotta hit it.
We got to hit play in our ears.
And scene. Play it.
And play it.
Play?
I mean, I can play it here.
You have it? Can you play it? Can you play it?
I can hear it very faintly in the background, but I can play it here if you want.
That sounds like garbage. Let's hear you play it. Let's hear
you
you
play it for us. This
Yeah.
is wonderful television. Can you hear it?
You can't hear this?
Un-effing believable. We had one job. We can't hear it.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm excited for anybody who can. Anywho, we'll have to listen after the show. Let's go VH1 behind the music on this, though. How'd you make it?
So I went on YouTube and I looked up royalty-free death metal music because when you think of like a theme song for a ketchup company, isn't the genre of music, doesn't it just say death metal to you?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah, for sure.
So I found some death metal instrumentals, and it was like a half-hour video where I kind of just scanned through the half hour of instrumentals, and I found a little segment of it where I was like, this feels like the one. This feels like the segment that I can throw some ketchup bars on. So I cut it up, and I ended up just sitting here where I do the podcast, where I do the sweat, and I recorded the vocals, and I chopped it up, and I laid out the tracks over the music, and honestly, a classic was born that day.
And you don't even put ketchup on your hot dog.
Legendary.
No, but I do on my
producer.
cheeseburger.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a good choice. Well,
I like that about
we're going to
you.
listen to it during a break so that we can hear this sweet, sweet death metal Clark's Ketchup theme song. But Jared, before we let you go, what's new on the pods this week? What can the people be looking at for?
Yeah, so we're season started, so we're back to 3 episodes. Actually, I can't even say back. For the first time ever, we are doing 3 episodes a week for Baseball is Dead. It's been great because there's a lot happening with everyone's favorite teams here. So we've got Jay Hayes, a Cleveland Guardians guy. They've been playing well. They just beat the Yankees. You've got Joey, is our resident Braves fan, and they had a tough weekend against the San Diego Padres. Dallas Braden is the broadcaster for the Oakland A's. Are they even a baseball team? We answer that question on the new episode of Baseball is Dead.
Seems like
I
they're
mean,
not,
long answer, no. Short answer,
yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jared. We will
Thank you, guys.
we will see you soon, homie. There is a lot of baseball games on the slate tonight, and Steve Buchanan is dishing out his picks for said baseball slate right now.
What's up, guys? Steve Buchanan here to dish out a best bet and DFS value play for tonight's MLB slate. Let's start over on DraftKings Sportsbook with one of my favorite bets you can make tonight. It's Trey Turner to go over 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs at -120. So obviously anything that comes to two hits, 2 runs scored, a combination of any. If it goes to 2, you cash this bet for Trey Turner tonight. This is a number he's gone over in 7 of the 10 games that he's played for the Phillies already this season. 6 of those games have been on hits alone. He's been racking up multi-hits days all throughout the season already in the very young year, and doing that with hits alone. Tonight, he has a good matchup against Jesus Luzardo of the Marlins. He's been great to start the year. Does put a lot of men on base. He can lose his control and kind of jam up the base paths there. Luzardo has already issued 5 walks through 12 2/3 innings that he's pitched in his 2 starts. I think this is a good spot for the Phillies overall to kind of break through and get to Luzardo, who, like I mentioned, has been stellar through the first 2 starts of the year. But Trey Turner hitting at the top of the lineup should be good for at least 5 at-bats tonight. I think he goes over that number of 1.5 hits, runs, and RBIs. Let's talk about a DFS value play. Jordan Walker continues their series with the Cardinals at Coors Field. This is the highest projected total on the night, an over-under of 12 runs on DraftKings Sportsbook. And it's very rare you're going to get somebody in a starting role that not only has been playing well, but you're getting him at under $3K, $2,900 tonight for Jordan Walker. It feels like the pricing has just simply not been adjusted for how good he's been thus far. He has posted fantasy points in every single game that he's played so far this season, giving him an average of 8.8 DraftKings fantasy points, giving him 2 home runs, 8 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. Cardinals are facing Kyle Freeland, who been pretty good so far, but continues to rely on contact to make outs already in the 12 2/3 innings that he's thrown. 51% fly ball rate allowed. I think the Cardinals are going to get out to a quick start here against the lefty Kyle Freeland. The Cardinals are very, very good against lefties. Jordan Walker hitting near the bottom of the lineup, so not a great spot overall, but he's been paying off that low salary all throughout the season here at just 2,900. So give me Jordan Walker in a really good matchup here against Kyle Freeland. That is your bet and DFS value play for tonight's MLB slate.
It is time to turn our attention to the league. All right.
The league or the association?
I want you to calm down. All right?
I'm just anticipating listening to
We're
Jared's
talking
song
NBA, all right? The play-in tournament tips off tonight. We're getting DFS and sportsbook previews from our dudes. We're going to start in the East with the Hawks and Heat, all right? Trae Young led Atlanta in points per game over in the 305. Nope, relax. Okay, he's doing something, so we were going to keep him off camera. But over in the 305, Miami going to lean on Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo. What is the DFS play here? Jeff, Pratt, obviously Nick Fryer's here too, but we're going to Jeff first.
The answer is Jimmy Butler. I'm honestly not sure how you could not pay up for Jimmy Butler tonight. He's not even that expensive, but there's so much working in his favor heading into this matchup. Firstly, we've got to talk about playoff Jimmy. It's pretty much a known fact that Butler doesn't actually try his hardest until the playoffs. He's even hinted at it throughout his career. That being said, when he takes the floor in the postseason, he's a different player. Last year, the guy averaged 27, 7, and 5 in the playoffs. I witnessed the phenomenon that is playoff Jimmy live in TD Garden in Game 6 against the Celtics, showing up when Boston had a chance to clinch, and the guy dropped 47 points to force a Game 7. So on top of that, he's facing the Hawks. They literally allow the most fantasy points to opposing wings. The ball's going to be in Jimmy's hands quite a bit in this game, so I expect a huge performance from him. I think you have to pay up for him.
All right, what do we think, Nick? Do you have to pay up for Jimmy Butler, or can you look somewhere else?
I think it's a fair take. I do agree that that Jimmy Butler is in a smash spot tonight, but I don't want to go and give you guys the same play that Jeff's talking about necessarily. You're welcome.
You are a pro, my man.
Thank
How about
you
you
very
pay
much.
$1,000 more for Trae Young?
I don't want Trae Young. I don't want DeJounte Murray. Those are two guys I definitely want to fade tonight. I know they've had some good moments against the Heat this season, but they've been very hit or miss by and large. And I think half the games that they played against the Heat, 4 games, they didn't do so hot. They're not returning value. Sadiq Bey, on the other hand, 5.8K has done well against the Miami Heat this season. 5 times value in all three of the games that he's seen the Heat. I know his last 3 performances were a little bit quiet, but he wasn't logging a whole lot of minutes. Not going to be the time for that right now with the play-in tournament. So Sadiq Bey, 5.8K, I think is my favorite mid-range play tonight.
So I think the Heat knocked off the Hawks with 3 of their 4 regular season meetings here, Nick. Miami ended the year, though, on a hot streak, I think winning 4 out of their last 5. What's your bet in this one on the DK Sportsbook?
Yeah, I'm going to go Heat to cover right now. It's -5 last I checked over on DK Sportsbook. I know, like you mentioned, Emerson, the Heat won 3 out of the 4 meetings that these two teams had, but they did split against the spread. But when you look at last season, I know this is not the same Miami Heat team that we saw last season, but they did kick the tar out of the Hawks when they saw them in their first game. And also, an interesting note that I saw, since Jimmy Butler joined the Miami Heat in Game 1 of playoff matchups, the Heat have won by 6+, 5 times in 8 chances. The 3 exceptions, last season when they beat the Celtics by 3 points, and then the other 2 times were losses, and those were against the teams that wanted to win the NBA Finals.
All right, let's move to...
Well, hold on. I need to get Jeff. I need to get Jeff's opinion on this.
I was just going to make sure you didn't talk to Jeff.
It's okay. Yes.
I thought maybe I should...
Jeff,
okay.
Buckle down here, buddy. Total's 228 right now in the DK Sportsbook. Hawks 4-0-1 to the over in their last 5 overall. Heat 5-0 to the over in their last 5 overall. Are you going over on this one?
I'm not going over on this one. I wouldn't mind taking a deflated over, but I think the play has to be Heat. -5 here. I completely agree with Nick, so I won't elaborate too much, but they've been way more consistent than Atlanta down the stretch. They hold the season series edge, winning 3 of the 4 matchups between these teams this year, and this is also the time when we really need to start valuing playoff experience, and the Heat have a ton of it. You know, this team has been to the finals in the bubble. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. They're at home in this matchup, so I definitely like them to cover the 5-point spread. It's also worth noting that the Hawks haven't won a game in Miami in I think 7 straight trips there. So I expect Miami to cover, not with relative ease, but they should get it done. And as I alluded to earlier, big game for Jimmy Butler. His points prop is set at 27.5 right now. I wouldn't be shocked if he goes well over that.
All right, Jeff, let's move to the West. Lakers, Timberwolves. For the Lakers, you got LeBron James, Anthony Davis. For the Timberwolves, Rudy Gobert, who's serving a suspension for just a little. Woo!
I would never try that.
I don't know.
So, what is the play here for DFS, Jeff?
Well, considering the Timberwolves have virtually no front court depth, I'm going to dip into some value here and highlight Taurean Prince. Minnesota will take the floor tonight without either one of their top centers on their depth chart and one of their top fours. As you guys said, Rudy Gobert is obviously suspended. Naz Reid suffered a season-ending injury a few weeks ago, and Jaden McDaniels punched a wall and broke his hand in his last game. So that means Karl Anthony Towns is going to slide to center, and Taurean Prince is going to play a lot of minutes at the 4. He's the type of player who kind of flies under the radar. I don't think anyone has really talked about Taurean Prince except to reminisce about that incredible Hawks team from the mid-2010s. But that being said, he's been pretty productive this season, averaging just fewer than 10 points per game. He's racked up 22-plus fantasy points in back-to-back contests. It's also worth noting the Lakers are not great defensively against opposing wings, so this is a good spot for him to outproduce his price tag at 5,600.
Man, the only thing
Hand
worse than
injuries
yeah, the
just
only
running
worse than
rampant throughout the league.
It
Right
Oh
really
my
is. Imagine
goodness.
Crazy.
breaking, like not only breaking your hand, but imagine cutting your hand on a
Like
plant
a vase, a
like
vase.
a vase.
Of Oz.
And
Of
imagine
Oz.
accusing someone of
yeah.
lying about
Yeah.
cutting their hand on glass.
Imagine
yeah,
being such a
couldn't be
naive
me.
little baby that you think that someone knocked over their widow flower pot and they cut their hand on their widow flower
Is
pot.
there his age
Stop.
here?
He's already
What's
dead.
going
He's
on?
already
All
dead.
right, Nick, your DFS play in this one.
I think the show's over, everybody. That's it right there.
You're great,
Going
man.
out on a high
No,
note.
no. You're a great journalist. Go ahead.
No,
Answer
thank
this
you very
question.
much. So I have two value plays that save a little bit more than what Jeff's providing. As much as I do think Taurean Prince is a good play, the Timberwolves tonight are going to be a good source of value. You have Jalen Knoll, who is questionable tonight, so make sure you check the injury report, check DK Live before you lock your rosters up. But he is at 3.3K going against the Lakers. I know we saw him log over 20 DK fantasy points in just, I think it was 20 minutes against the Lakers earlier in the season. And when you have no McDaniels, no Naz Reid, and no Rudy Gobert on the floor, he has the 5th highest usage rate on the Timberwolves. If Noel doesn't play, because again, he is questionable, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is an interesting play too at 4.2K. When you also take Noel off the floor on top of those other 3 guys, he has the 3rd highest usage rate on the team, behind only Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards.
On the DK Sportsbook here, Jeff Pratt, you have the Lakers listed currently as 8.5-point favorites over the Timberwolves. Your Celtics hero, Kendrick Perkins, is picking LA to make the NBA Finals. What is your move tonight in this game?
Well, I'm not sure I would call Kendrick Perkins my Celtics hero, considering the guy seems to slander someone on the Celtics every couple of weeks, and then once they start playing well, he flips on them. But we're not here to talk about Kendrick Perkins. We're here to talk about this matchup. I don't think the Lakers are going to make the finals. I do think, as of right now, I call them the 3rd best team in the West entering the playoffs. So I'm pretty high on them. I expect them to win tonight and cover the spread. There are really only 2 ways LA can lose this game. The first is that they're already looking ahead to Memphis in the first round and they don't bring any type of intensity to this matchup. And then the second way is Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns combined for like 80 points. And outside of either of those things, I don't see how LA can drop this one. Even if the Timberwolves were fully healthy and functional, which is so far from the case, I would still like the Lakers in this game. They've really turned the corner since the trade deadline. Anthony Davis has stayed healthy and returned to form as one of the best centers in the league. LeBron James saw the LeBron of foot doctors, magically healed. Now he's back to playing great basketball. D'Angelo Russell and Jared Vanderbilt have been tremendous additions since the trade deadline. The Lakers are going to win this game, cover the spread, and then they are going to give the Grizzlies a run for their money in the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if they win that series.
Okay, Wolves have all the dysfunction in the world. That is well known. The Lakers didn't always look like a playoff team this season, but they certainly finished like one, winning 9 of their last 11 here, Nick. So what do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm actually going to stay away from the spread on this one as much as I do expect the Lakers to win. It's just too big of a number for me. But when I thought about this game, it's like, okay, so LeBron's playing, LeBron's good to go. I got to look at his props. I know his points prop was interesting. I think it was at 28.5, but I ended up landing on LeBron to log a double-double. It is at even money right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. In 4 of the last 5 game ones that LeBron has played in, he's logged a double-double, and he also hasn't logged a double in the last 4 games, which means he's due.
He is certainly due.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Nick, any early thoughts on tomorrow's games? Bulls, Raptors, Thunder, Pelicans. Thunder going to wear their blue icon edition jerseys, and they went 8-16 in 24 regular season games wearing the blue jerseys this season, which included going 1-8 in their previous 9 games. So I'm just saying, if you're superstitious, it's not good.
No,
or if you're just a little stitious.
A little stitious.
I am very superstitious. One time I was driving down a road and a black cat crossed my path and completely turned around and went another direction.
And
I thought you were going to say you just drove
you.
off the road, but yeah.
You're here. Now you're a cat owner.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So,
Named after Billy.
Yeah.
of course. But I actually do like the Thunder. I'm going to take the points for them with 5.5 on DK Sportsbook. And then looking at the Bulls game, too, I know that the Raptors have done a good job of covering at home this season, but the Bulls have done a good job of covering as road underdogs. I like them getting 5 points as well. And also, I got to look into it a little bit more, but right now I do like Fred VanVleet to go under his points prop at 18.5. Got to look at the numbers a little bit more that surround this, but yeah, that's where I'm landing with both underdogs tomorrow.
All right, Jeff, what do you think? No hand injuries to be seen with these 2 teams. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not superstitious. That sounds like something that only little babies would be. So I'm all about logic.
Whoa.
You just dissed
what?
Nick.
Coming at
I thought you guys said you were superstitious. Did I diss Nick?
And then Nick agreed.
You're choosing violence.
You come after
You're
me after
superstitious.
Jesse roasted you earlier. It was the best roast ever.
I think this is the second time in a row that I've accidentally
tough talk when you're not in studio.
roasted. This is the second time I've accidentally roasted Nick when we've been on together, and I feel really bad because I do not mean for this to happen.
Bro, you're a good person. You've done nothing wrong.
Okay, Jeff, give your thoughts on the games. We'll stop being mean to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I want nothing to do with this Bulls-Raptors game. Both of these teams are incredibly inconsistent. If I had to pick something, it would be Nikola Vucevic over 27.5 points and rebounds. I think this is a good matchup for him, but in reality, I don't feel comfortable taking anything from this game. I'll reevaluate once I see who wins there. And then in the Thunder-Pelicans matchup, I think the Pelicans should have enough firepower to get it done, but the bet I'm most confident in is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander over points. And I think it's set at 32.5 right now. The guy has just been on a different level this year. The ball's going to be in his hands a ton. We could see like a 40% usage rate for him. I wouldn't be shocked if he drops 40 to 50 points, even if the Pelicans do win this game.
All right, everybody, deep breath. The
Thank
segment is over.
Yeah.
All right?
The Timberwolves of panels, apparently.
We'll see you later, Jeff. Be careful watering your plants later.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna take a break. We're gonna dish out some draft needs for the NFC West because we did the AFC West last time. Some big news in the AFC North, though. Ravens made a big move in their passing game Sunday, but it wasn't signing Lamar Jackson to a long-term extension. Instead, they decided to overpay OBJ big time. Here's what the Gojo gang has to say about it.
I don't want to give this too much weight in the, is it going to help them get Lamar Jackson feeling more comfortable coming back to Baltimore? Ultimately, money is going to solve that problem one way or another. Money and what the market looks like, whatever the other NFL teams that have the opportunity to go and bid for Lamar Jackson looks like. Obviously, I think we'll have an even better clue about that after or around the draft, especially like we've talked about with a team like the Colts, who seems very much like the one name that's kind of publicly come out here interested in Lamar Jackson. Yeah. But it doesn't hurt in that regard, right? To do something, whether you knew it was a player that Lamar Jackson liked or not, whether they have a relationship or not, which clearly we saw they've got enough to pick up the phone and do the congratulations for a guy that could be your teammate this coming fall. Even with all that, it still never hurts to send that message. It still never hurts to show, hey, we're doing the work to change in the areas that you've seen we have struggled to change with. We have struggled to grow with during your time here. We understand and we've heard we haven't done a good job bringing you weapons. We heard Greg Roman in this offense didn't evolve in the ways that you need. And so all these changes getting met now, even while there has been a little bit of public animosity in the back and forth between Lamar and the team, at least I think does something. There's a value in that, but there's also just a value in general in making your team better in a place that you are deficient in with one of the best options available at this time in the marketplace this offseason. Because we can evaluate these deals against contracts like we talked about from other seasons, against contracts with other teams. You can't always do that in a vacuum. You've got to look at the position that the team is right now, and this team needs to get better in this area in a hurry, and among the resources available, this was going to be one of the best options they had, especially in a win now mode. And so I can understand why you would go, and relative to what other people were going to pay, probably have to kick in a little bit more.
So you're saying that this is more of a no-brainer than it is a splash signing?
I mean, it's still a big splash because it's Odell's name, but as far as what he's going to add to the team, that part is kind of a gamble just because of the injury history of it. Like, that is something that we've talked about that's hard to ignore, but among the moves that were out there, I don't want to say no-brainer, but it was one of the moves that to me would indicate, hey, you're serious about improving in this area based on what's available to you right now. So it definitely made sense. I mean, think about how many off seasons now we've been going through in every off season and trying to go, oh, well, this free agent receiver would make a good fit for the Ravens, and they never go ahead and do the thing. And so seeing them finally take the plunge, seeing them make meaningful change, to me, that's important. To me, that shouldn't be lost on anybody because we haven't seen that as much lately.
Do you think there's any other positions that could get signed that would make Lamar? No, you already said it. It's the money. It's just going to be the money for him. Because I do like the concept of giving him incentives and actual roster moves to be excited to come back and play with, even under a franchise tag. But if he feels disrespected, then he's not going to do it regardless.
The Gojo guys, always an entertaining listen, which, by the way, you can listen to a fresh, brand spanking new Gojo podcast every weekday morning. Get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts, like the Gojo Show podcast with Mike Golick Jr. and Brandon Newman, and they will be joining us on this show tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time, as they do every Wednesday morning on The Sweat. These guys are with us almost every day of the week. Pierce Dietrich, Jeff Ulrich. Before we dish out some draft needs for the NFC West, we just heard the Gojo Gang talking about it. Baltimore adding a big name to its offense here, Jeff. Odell Beckham Jr. Question is, will Lamar Jackson be the one throwing passes to him? So what impact will OBJ signing have on Lamar's situation with a team whose fan base he has already said goodbye to?
I have absolutely no idea. None. I mean, this makes no sense to me. You know, if you're bringing in OBJ to somehow quell Lamar Jackson, or around the assumption that Lamar Jackson is going to be back for you next season, you may want to take care of Lamar Jackson. You know, you may want to actually sign him. You know, there's so many weird things going on here. I mean, you've got Lamar Jackson and Odell Beckham, obviously, you know, hanging out in the club after the signing, but were they really celebrating the fact they might be teammates, or were they celebrating the fact that Odell Beckham, coming off an ACL injury, entering his age 31 season, just got the Ravens to give him a $13 million signing bonus, a $50 million salary, and an $18 million potential salary with bonuses? Were they celebrating that? Because it kind of feels like they may have been doing that. So, yes, as the Gojo guys just said, you know, Odell Beckham, probably the best available on the market. The Ravens needed to address the wide receiver position. I get it. But this is a pretty ludicrous salary for a guy who averaged 38 yards per game in 2021, has not played a down of football in well over a year, and as I said, is now, you know, 31 years old. He's like 52 years old in real human years, right? So Odell Beckham could certainly fall off a cliff at any point. He's a special player. I don't doubt that. This feels like overpayment, but in terms of just where the Ravens are at, it's messier than the Jets right now. I mean, the Jets signing ex-Packers before bringing in Aaron Rodgers. At least the Aaron Rodgers thing seems done. We have no idea where the Ravens and Lamar Jackson stand, and I really don't think this Odell Beckham situation has clarified anything.
All right, Pierce, maybe the Ravens here are trying to mend a shaky relationship with their quarterback. What message do you think they're trying to send Lamar?
It's more of a meme is what they're sending to him. Like, if you want to mend things, sign him to a long-term deal, but they'll do anything but. This is a lot like that Pawn Stars meme where the best I can do is OBJ. Lamar wants a long-term deal. And like, oh no, we'll bring in a receiver with, a kind of dicey past who's had a bad situation basically everywhere he's been, except for the one place he was there for just a handful of games. You give him a season anywhere, 2 seasons, runs into some issues. The last time that we heard from OBJ, he was getting kicked off an airplane.
Yep.
These are questions I'm asking myself. Lamar is asking him. So, like, what's going on? Yeah, it's cool. OBJ gave him a call. They went and hung out. But he would much rather get the call that says, A, you've been traded, or B, we're going to work out a long-term deal. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I just don't understand this at all.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see what happens. Who knows? Could be anything at this point, truly. I don't think anything would surprise me.
I know you were reading into it quite a bit, like them out at the club.
Well, because they were like
partying.
in the club together, and it was like, I
know.
mean,
I just know like the NFL guys.
posting pictures of them on FaceTime, talking, like, I don't know.
Because these guys, while they want to destroy each other on the field, I mean, it's still like a fraternal thing, the whole NFL. So maybe Lamar just is like super happy for
I'm
OBJ,
just saying.
It's like you're paying for the tab.
You could be right, but I'm also just saying this could be something where Lamar could use this as a little bit of an out to save face, like, oh, well, now they've done this for me, so like I can make some concessions, like, because he's kind of back in. I'm just saying, I could see that happening. All right, let's jump into NFC West draft needs. So starting with the 49ers, Jeff, they addressed some of their positional needs in free agency, right? Signing or trading for 9 players outside the organization, retaining another 9 from the 2022 NFC Championship game roster. So what do you think they're looking for in this draft?
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers are going to be one of the more boring teams to talk about in the draft just because they don't have any glaring weaknesses. They did lose a little bit on the O-line. I fully expect them to go there. I do think tight end is an area of need for them. Behind George Kittle, the cupboard is pretty bare at this point, and we've seen Kyle Shanahan offenses typically have like 2 or 3 viable pass catchers at that position. So I expect that the 49ers, in what is probably the deepest tight end draft pool potentially ever, to address that position. There's some really interesting names. Luke Musgrave, suffered a knee injury last season, but he was on track to be like one of the most athletic top end tight ends in the draft. And I think he's going to be there for the 49ers to get at some point. Zach Kuntz is another player later in the draft where, again, just a supreme athlete, a combine superstar, but would make a lot of sense for Kyle Shanahan to go off. So I look for the 49ers to potentially get, like a backup or another viable pass catching tight end. I think that's the most exciting thing you're going to see from them. I'm sure he'll grab a running back because he does every season, but the 49ers just don't have a ton of needs. I think they need to shore up the O-line and get a tight end.
Yeah, Pierce, GM John Lynch said, like, the core of the roster remained intact, so their biggest need going into the draft is going to be basically, like, depth here. So they have a total of 11 picks right now, beginning in the 3rd round with selection number 99. But obviously, I mean, they've got some experience picking deep in the draft. Final pick of the 2022 draft, ring a bell, Brock Purdy. I don't know, kind of, like, worked out for them. Ever heard of him?
Yeah, that's pretty surprising. I can't imagine that they're able to pull that off again. Kudos to them for doing it. This is not a team that we want to talk about a lot because, as Jeff mentioned and you mentioned, they're not going to draft until the 3rd round, 99. And then even then, they have all the players they need. They just need to add depth. And with the picks that they have, they're all in the back end. And so even as they're adding depth, these are not guys that are going to really be involved this year. They're making picks for the future, which I think is what they had planned on Brock Purdy being, but he got forced into action and played pretty well. But what they're going to do is draft, if I were the 49ers, just focus on building for 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. That's very boring. I know the only exciting thing we can do is talk about maybe them getting a tight end that slides to the back. I would think that it would be much better for them to just continue to work on the offensive line as it ages a little bit, maybe work on their secondary, just be very safe and conservative with their picks.
Pierce, what about the Seahawks? I feel like they're entering this season in a great position after making a lot of tough decisions last offseason.
Yeah, but those tough decisions that they made really worked out. They had an awesome draft last year, so if they can do that again this year, they're going to be maybe possibly a threat to take down the West. We saw them sneak into the playoffs, and I don't know if Pete Carroll's going to get as lucky. A lot of times you try to evaluate the talent as best as you can, but they really nailed some late round, 2nd round picks. Maybe they can pull that off, but they don't really have to because they've got several first-round picks, several second-round picks, a third-round pick. We'd like to see them add to their front seven, get some defensive line, get some linebackers. Their secondary played pretty well last year, but as the season wore on, then their rush defense really struggled. Their pass rush really struggled, and they still were able to make the playoffs, but that is definitely a place where they need to improve. And the flashy story is going to be quarterback. The idea that maybe Anthony Richardson falls to 20th to them, and they draft him, and he plays behind Geno for a year. That could work. He needs at least a year to develop, and maybe in the future you've got the young Florida quarterback, very athletic, playing side by side with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett because they're locked up for several years. That could be really the way to go, but he has to fall, and it still is a little bit risky because the guy just had one really good pro day, not very good in the regular season. But if there's a guy that can work his magic with a quarterback, it will be Pete Carroll.
All right, Jeff, what do you think the Seahawks need?
I think the Seahawks are really a team where you just say they need to just take best available whenever they're up. They still have a lot of weaknesses, and it's not like they're super strong in any one area. If a wide receiver falls, they can even go wide receiver. But I think what you're going to see from them in the first round is they will probably go defense. Pete Carroll absolutely loves his athletes on defense. I wouldn't be shocked if they went Tyree Wilson potentially over one of the other couple big defensive players that are up there. I also think Christian Gonzalez is a possibility, trying to rebuild the Legion of Boom alongside Tariq Woolen. Both of those players are special athletes. They're, Tyree Wilson a little bit more of a project potentially, but they just fit in the Pete Carroll mode. And I think the Seahawks will be okay if they just continue to just pick, again, athletes potentially like with really high upside whenever they're up on the podium. And I think that makes a lot of sense for them. I don't know about the Anthony Richardson thing. If he does fall, it'll be tempting. We don't see the Seahawks typically go after quarterbacks early, but they have had like the whole Russ dynasty where they haven't had to worry about the position for so long. So it'll be interesting to see if they do that. I have a feeling they won't. I think they're okay with Geno Smith for at least going into this season and trying to build around him. They're in a really nice spot though, man. They have so many draft picks. They don't have glaring weaknesses, but they do have a lot of places they need to just shore up. And I think they're going to do that this draft. They just need to like hit a B+. They don't need to hit it out of the park. They just need to have a decent draft, and they're going to really improve.
Well, if the 49ers needed not much, now we go to a team that needs everything. The Rams, geez, fresh off that 5-12 campaign, 14 months removed from winning a Super Bowl. Jeff, where to begin? And I mean, they had to part ways with Jalen Ramsey, Bobby Wagner, Leonard Floyd. Like, they really need some good picks, and I think their first pick is 36.
Yeah, they do have a lot of late round picks. And look, we're talking about MEMS on this show. I mean, the Rams are going to be just using a lot of Flex Seal this year, just try to patch in holes wherever they can, just slapping that thing on the leaks. And they're running it back with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford. They need to address the O-line. They need some help on defense, but like you said, they don't pick till the second round. So this team needs to basically just try and shore up the O-line and keep Matthew Stafford alive, and they need to replace Jalen Ramsey, and they're not going to have a lot of high-end picks to deal with.
Pierce, I'm reading an article that says their biggest draft needs were listed as cornerback, defensive end, defensive tackle, receiver, and quarterback, but we could have listed every position and been fine.
Yeah, you are right. They could have they need something everywhere, but I'm with Jeff. Offensive line, well, I guess where's the place you're going to get the most bang for your buck with the draft picks they have? They don't have a high-end pick. They do have several they have a second round and 2 third-round picks, and you can add offensive line depth. You may not get star offensive linemen, but it's going to make your line better. As you improve your line, you're going to improve Stafford. We saw him struggle even during their Super Bowl run. When he didn't have good blocking, he struggled. And if you can't block for him, he can't get the ball to Cooper Kupp. You can't really boost this offense in any way. Whitworth retiring was a concern last year, and we saw that play out. The offensive line was pretty interchangeable and not in a good way. And then with their mediocre running backs, they really need people that can block for them. That would be where I would burn my second and third round picks if I'm the Rams. Just build up the line. I know they got holes everywhere, but you got to start with the first hole.
Pierce, Cardinals, last one here, finishing in last place last season, which screams they need a lot. So what should they do in the draft?
Yeah, here we go. Another team with another whole bunch of needs. I think where they need to start is with their secondary. The secondary was pretty rough in 2021, but they exceeded expectations. But by December, it was a makeshift team. It was really falling apart. And then last year, their secondary really struggled. And now they've lost Byron Murphy at cornerback. They've got a top pick. They can go after one of these top cornerbacks. Jeff mentioned Christian earlier. Christian Gonzalez. And then you've got Devin Witherspoon. I think I like Witherspoon better. I know that Gonzalez has the athleticism and the height, but I kind of like the smaller guy who's had to learn to do more. The PFF grade on him is through the roof. No one's ever had any quite numbers that he has thrown up there. And I think that's where they should start. They need offensive line help. They need defensive line. They need help everywhere. But I think it starts with them boosting up their secondary.
All right, Jeff, what do you think here, man? Because, right, Kyler Murray is likely to miss maybe a chunk of the season. DeAndre Hopkins could be traded. That offensive line sucks.
It's pretty bleak. The Cardinals would be great. They need to trade back. I actually like Pierce's idea. I think Gonzalez makes a lot of sense for them. Jonathan Gannon, the former DC of the Philadelphia Eagles, you expect them to go defense. Potentially, they may get a name that'll drop to them. I think if they trade back, though, into the 10-11 spot, you could even get, like a Tyree Wilson drop back to you and then pick up a cornerback, later on. So there's a lot of options for the Cardinals, but they need capital, they need manpower, and they need to just improve the talent at a lot of positions, cornerback and, defensive end being the most specific for me.
All right, thanks, guys. Good stuff. The NFL will soon be thriving with the draft 2 weeks from Thursday, but golf is thriving right
This is incredible,
now.
yeah.
Right. Sunday's Masters ratings were up 19% and were the highest of any golf broadcast in 5 years.
And look at this. John Rahm may have to go with Panda Express for next year's Masters dinner. The 28-year-old predicting he'd win a decade ago thanks to a fortune cookie. Impressive? Yes. But so was Jason Sobel calling it here on The Sweat last week. Watch this.
John Rahm, because he's the best player in the world right now. I know Scotty Scheffler is the hottest player, but John Rahm leads in strokes gained total this season. He's doing everything really, really well. He's going to win this week.
All right, the man, the myth, the legend. Time to look into that crystal ball once again, Jason Sobel. Great to see your handsome face. Take a victory lap here, dude. What was the most impressive part of John Rahm's first green jacket? Go ahead, do it.
No victory laps in this business.
Come
Don't pat
on!
yourself on the back. We just moved on to the next week. You know that. But I will talk John Rahm for a minute here. My biggest impression from Rahm this past week was his perseverance. Started out with a 4-putt double bogey on the first hole. And by the way, I looked up at the scoreboard in the press building at Augusta National, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I just went on every platform in the world. I did Sweat on DraftKings. I told him Rahm's going to win. He's 2 over already. Come on. And I was getting people chirping on me and Twitter and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so he persevered from that, wound up making birdies on the next 2 holes, 9 birdies, shot 65 in the first round, tied for the lead. Persevered after being in the bad side of the weather draw. Brooks Koepka's sitting back at the rental house sipping cocoa on Saturday morning. John Rahm's dealing the worst conditions. And then Sunday going into it, he was trailing a guy who knows how to win majors. Didn't faze him whatsoever. I'm not sure John Rahm, who's got a fiery personality, little temper, could have done that 2 or 3 years ago. He's a more mature player than he is right now than he was then.
All right, Jason, what was your biggest takeaway from the performances of the LIV guys? So Brooks failing, obviously, to hold on to that lead. So the joke was always going to be, right, that he wasn't used to playing 72 holes. But frankly, the LIV guys had a very strong showing. Koepka obviously tying for second with Phil Mickelson. Patrick Reed tied for fourth. Like, I mean, they were pretty impressive.
They were. And anyone who wants to look at the LIV players and say, they're just ceremonial golfers, they took the money, they can't play more than 54 holes, they can't play without music blaring or wearing long pants or anything like that. I think you were proven wrong this past week. They're still world-class golfers, even if they don't play on the PGA Tour any longer. And look, I'm an optimistic guy. I like looking at the silver lining here. I will say that having players who don't play against each other any other events during the year almost brings up the anticipation level for the major championships a little bit, because we know we won't see Brooks Koepka and John Rahm ever again until the PGA Championship, US Open, Open Championship, and then presumably not again till the Masters the next year. And so only having that 4 times a year almost makes these majors a little more enticing.
So withdrawing from the Masters after making his 23rd consecutive cut at Augusta, that was disappointing It was sad to see Tiger limping around, Jason, with his plantar fasciitis acting up again. Was this a wake-up call for many of us who were hoping Tiger would return to his old self there?
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, I would say it's somewhat miraculous that Tiger even made the cut in the first place. Remember, his buddies Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas missed the cut. So for Tiger to go out there and even make it to the weekend was really impressive stuff. That said, he has been telling us for a few years now that this is not going to last forever, that at some point he will not be able to do this anymore. I don't know how soon that's coming, but I would suggest that we all start listening to Tiger himself if we want a little insight on what's going on. For the first time, Emerson, I'm still, look, I understand. I don't care if Tiger shows up as an honorary starter when he's 75 years old and he's pushing a walker. I still think he has a chance to win the green jacket that year. All of that said, I have finally moved to the point where I think there's a greater probability that Tiger hangs it up completely than Tiger wins again. Doesn't mean he's hanging it up. Doesn't mean he can't win. But I think the probability is greater that he's gone and not playing anymore than that he wins again.
I said over the weekend, I am totally fine if he just wants to play the majors moving forward, makes the cut, and then withdraws. Like totally fine. But man, I want to see him so bad. It feels so good seeing him out there. But unfortunately, when he starts limping around, not so much.
Yeah, not great. Now let's get a sportsbook look at this week's RBC Heritage. It's an elevated event. A lot of big names right back at it after the Masters. So Jason, how do we feel about the Masters hangover? How are we approaching this?
You know, Jesse, I've looked at this in the past as far as, it hasn't been a designated event, but still players come from the Masters and make that quick trip over to Hilton Head. And I said, you know what? I'm going to fade those guys because, they just were the pressure cooker of a major. It's hard to get up for another event the next week. It never seems to work. That's like this narrative that we have on Tuesday that by Sunday afternoon, we're like, why did I think that? These are world-class players. They get in a nap on Monday afternoon. They're ready to go the next week. And so I am not buying into that this week. There are 47 players making the trip from Augusta to Hilton Head, including 10 players who are inside the top 10 in ties on the Masters leaderboard this past week. So a lot of big-name guys and a lot of guys who are in really good form right now as well.
Okay, favorite guy at or near the top of the betting board?
I'm going down just a little bit. I don't love the numbers on the guys near the top. Look, can Scotty Scheffler win? Of course he can. I think there's going to be a little Masters hangover for Jon Rahm, as well there should be. A lot of people like Patrick Cantlay. It's a little too short for me as well. I'm going down to Sungjae Im, who's been trending in the right direction, does everything really well. The only way he can't keep up with some of the game's absolute best players is off the tee. He doesn't hit it as long. Well, you don't have to hit it long at Harbour Town. It's less than 7,200 yards. In fact, the bigger hitters will rarely pull driver out of the bag this week anyway, so it levels the playing field. I like him a lot out of that top tier.
All right, long shots. Any guys enticing to you here?
Yeah, so a couple guys. I don't know that Matt Kuchar is necessarily a long shot at his number. I think plus 5,000, plus 5,500, but I'll give you the numbers on him anyway. 19 career starts at this event. A win, a second-place finish, third-place finish, 7 top 10s, 12 top 25s. He's only missed the cut once. That was 20 years ago. Matt Kuchar, with 3 top 10s in his last 5 starts, all things coming together, I expect him to be a very, very popular play in every format. If the ship goes down, we're all going down with it. And then one guy with a much bigger number, who I love for an outright because he's proven that he can win, coming back from last year's injury, Harris English starting to play some good golf once again. He came in second place at the Arnold Palmer Invitational just a month ago at 150 to 1. I love that number that your traders put out there this week. I like English, and I will have some outrights on him.
Hey, why'd Rory withdraw? Do you have any insight there?
It's a great question, Emerson. I have not heard anything yet. It's something I'm going to look into. Mental anguish could be a deciding factor there because he just looked terrible. That was appalling the way Rory played, especially in the second round. Shot 77 in the second round at Augusta. Tied Jose Maria Olazabal, who doesn't even play golf anymore. I mean, it was just embarrassing for Rory. He had a little sort of wry smile on his face. Not that he was happy about it, just as if he was resigned to his fate at Augusta National. And for the first time, I'm starting to think Rory, who turns 34 next week, we've always thought it was inevitable that he was going to win a green jacket. That window is starting to close a little bit. All it takes are a couple more Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, other player wins over the next 3-4 years, and he's a guy in his late 30s who's never done it and may never do it. Greg Norman was inevitable at one point, so is Ernie Els. Rory McIlroy could join that club of guys that shoulda, coulda, woulda at Augusta National.
Yeah, and I thought with these elevated events, like the big dogs could only skip one of them. And I know he skipped the Tournament of Champions, right, in Hawaii earlier this year. So this would be a second elevated event.
I don't know. He was in line to finish probably second once again in that player impact program. That's where he was last year, an extra $12 million point. I don't know. I know professional golfers are built different than you and I. I'm not skipping Harbor Town to give up $12 million.
Nope. All right, dude, time to do that thing we like, Jason Sobel. You did it last week. Do it again. Deliver for the people. Who wins the RBC Heritage, homie?
I'll have a little Shane Lowry. Just wanted to mention that since I haven't mentioned him yet. Okay. But it's the guy I talked about earlier, Sunjay M. Nice. I believe plus 2,800 right now, maybe 2,500 either way. Trending in the right direction. Love everything about his game. This is a guy that plays a lot of golf, and so having to go out and play the week after the Masters there, he is plus 2,500. That should not faze Sunjay at all. Like everything about him this week.
All right, good stuff. We appreciate it as always, Jason. That is going to do it for us. Madden begins at noon. The slate begins at 5 p.m. Eastern. You will be back tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, we're going to miss you.
Yep. See you on
Godspeed,
Tuesday.
Sweet Chinchilla. Godspeed.
Thank you.